Before anything else, I want you to prepare yourself for what you're about to hear. Because this isn't the kind of truth people share openly. Not your friends, not the men around you, not the women who learn these lessons through pain, and definitely not society. What I'm going to tell you today is something most people will avoid saying out loud because it forces you to look directly at yourself. No excuses, no sugarcoating, no comforting illusions. If you're an older man or a man stepping into that stage of life, I need you to listen with complete honesty. Because the truth is simple. Women are not drawn to you for the reasons you assume. They don't desire you for your age. They don't chase you for your money. They don't crave you because of your experience. Those are the lies insecure men tell themselves so they don't have to confront the deeper reality. The real reason, the one that rarely gets spoken, is far more uncomfortable and far more powerful. And once you understand it, once you see the psychology behind it, your entire approach to women, to relationships, and even to yourself will shift permanently. You will stop chasing things that never mattered. You'll stop building your identity on illusions. And you'll start becoming the kind of man who draws women in without effort. The kind of man who becomes magnetic simply by existing. Because the truth is this: some older men become irresistible, while others fade into invisibility. Some men gain a quiet natural power with age, while others grow weaker, needier, and easily overlooked. And the difference has nothing to do with luck. It has everything to do with the invisible quality women are constantly evaluating. Every time they talk to you, observe you, or feel your presence. If you're ready to hear the part most men will never be strong enough to face, then stay with me. Because once you hear this truth, you cannot unhear it. When I say women don't want an older man because of his age, most men misunderstand what that really means. Age itself is irrelevant. Age is nothing more than the number of winters you've survived. It's the count of birthdays you've celebrated while remaining exactly who you always were. Women don't desire age, they desire the transformation that age should produce. That's where the discomfort begins, because many men grow older without ever growing up. They collect years without collecting wisdom. They survive experience without learning from it. They look mature on paper, but carry the emotional depth of the boy they once were. Women want the older man who has turned time into evolution. The man who allowed difficulty to shape him instead of break him. The man who didn't run from challenges but examined them. The man who didn't collapse under pressure but became sharper because of it. The man who didn't avoid introspection but prioritized it. This man is attractive not because he's lived longer, but because he's lived consciously. Because he used his failures, heartbreaks, disappointments, victories, losses, and everything in between as raw material to build a stronger, clearer, more grounded version of himself. While many men waste their 20s and 30s chasing approval, trying to impress people who don't matter, or fighting for validation instead of growth, this man invests those years into becoming someone solid, someone reliable, someone rooted. And then one day, women notice something different about him. They're drawn to him without understanding why. They feel more secure around him. They feel more open with him. They feel more feminine in his presence, not because he demands it, but because his energy allows it. Time only becomes attractive when you use it well. The man women desire is the man who carries his years as if they taught him something. The man whose body language shows purpose, whose voice reflects experience, whose choices reveal clarity. A man who learned the cost of acting without intention, the damage caused by speaking without thinking, the emptiness of relationships based on insecurity. He moves with calm certainty because his life has already taught him what chaos feels like. He doesn't need to be the loudest in the room because his presence speaks before he does. Women fall for this man not because of his age, but because age shaped him into a man who understands himself. A man with emotional intelligence because he studied his emotions. A man with boundaries because he's lived without them. A man with patience because he knows the destruction caused by impatience. A man with discipline because he's felt the consequences of lacking it. This is the kind of man that makes a woman's guard drop. Not with words, not with charm, not with wealth, but with maturity. Psychological maturity, emotional maturity, self-awareness. Women feel safe with him, not because he talks like he's wise, but because he is wise. Not because he knows the right lines, but because he knows himself. His confidence is not performance, it's clarity. He doesn't chase approval because he knows what he brings. He doesn't beg for attention because he knows what he deserves. And most importantly, he never uses age as a badge of superiority, because his growth speaks louder than any number ever could. One of the biggest myths today is that women want older men simply because they're older. That idea is wrong, completely wrong. Women want older men who evolved, who didn't waste time but used it, who didn't stay emotionally fragile but became emotionally stable. They want the man whose years shaped competence, composure, and character. Because that kind of man is rare, and rarity is always magnetic. So when women choose an older man, they're not choosing the years. They're choosing what he did with those years. They're choosing the depth he built, the clarity he earned, the strength he forged. And once you understand this, you'll stop trying to look older, richer, or more impressive. You'll stop performing. You'll stop pretending. You'll focus on becoming someone time can't weaken, someone life can't shake. Because in the end, the truth is simple. A woman isn't drawn to your age. She's drawn to who you became while aging. When people talk about attraction, they still cling to the outdated formula: money, looks, status, style. As if women are vending machines where the right combination unlocks romance. As if attraction is a transaction. But attraction doesn't come from what a man possesses. It comes from what a man radiates. You can buy a nice car, a tailored suit, or a luxury watch, but you cannot buy presence. Presence is earned through self-confrontation, through knowing yourself deeply, through facing your flaws and growing from them. This is why so many wealthy men still feel unnoticed. Why physically attractive men sometimes lose to men who simply know themselves better. Because the older man women desire isn't the one with the most material upgrades. It's the one whose energy carries weight. The one who stands like he has nothing to hide, nothing to run from, nothing to prove. That kind of presence affects a woman instantly, not intellectually, but neurologically. It calms her without him trying. It makes her mind more alert while her body relaxes. It sparks curiosity without any performance. Because real presence eliminates the need for performance. A man who is secure in himself doesn't need theatrics. His silence has more impact than another man's showing off. His stillness reflects more confidence than another man's loudness. His calmness is not weakness. It's evidence of a man whose inner world is settled. Women sense that stability. They feel it. They respond to it without needing to analyze it. Presence is the subconscious message a man sends before he speaks. It shows in the steadiness of his breath, the directness of his eye contact, the steadiness of his emotions, the depth of his listening. And yes, listening matters, deeply. Women are starving for men who listen with intention, not impatience. Because listening is quiet power. It communicates confidence without showmanship. It says, I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to understand you. A man with presence makes a woman feel seen instead of evaluated, understood instead of judged, valued instead of used. And because this type of man is so rare, his energy becomes naturally seductive. It makes a woman feel like she can soften without losing herself. Not because she's weak, but because she recognizes strength she doesn't have to fear. Presence is more attractive than success alone, because success without emotional maturity feels cold, sharp, and self centered, but presence with maturity feels safe, warm, and deeply grounding. A man who has both competence and emotional composure becomes unforgettable. He's the man she remembers when she's alone, the one she trusts even in silence, the one she feels secure with without needing explanations. Presence comes from self mastery, and self mastery comes from facing your own darkness. The men who lack presence are the men avoiding themselves, avoiding accountability, avoiding emotional discipline, avoiding self reflection. They appear confident on the outside, but their energy is scattered. Women feel that instability immediately, and instability kills attraction faster than anything else. So, if you want to understand why some older men are effortlessly desired, here is the truth. Their presence is the result of a life lived consciously. Their calm comes from battles they didn't run from. Their confidence comes from rebuilding themselves after life broke them. Women aren't drawn to their age, they're drawn to the work they did through their age. And if you take only one truth from all of this, let it be this: real attraction is not about what you display in public, but who you are when no one is watching. One of the biggest misunderstandings men have today is thinking women are impressed by chaos disguised as confidence. They confuse impulsiveness with passion. They mistake loudness for strength. They think attention is the same as connection. But a woman's attraction doesn't anchor in noise, it anchors in stability. Women are drawn to men who bring clarity, not confusion, depth, not drama, emotional grounding, not emotional volatility. Women want the man who has organized his inner world, because that man doesn't just show up, he stabilizes her. Most men never learn this. Attraction is not about how intensely you chase her, it's about how intentionally you manage yourself. Stability is magnetic because it creates psychological safety, and safety is the quiet foundation of desire. A woman cannot open her heart, her mind, or her body to a man she cannot trust. And trust is not created through charm or promises. It is created through consistency, calmness, and emotional self control. You can tell everything about a man by how he behaves under pressure. Does he crumble? Does he lash out? Does he panic? Or does he remain intentional, steady, and aware? Women sense this instantly, not because they're judging, but because they are biologically attuned to leadership energy. A man who jumps to anger is not someone she can lean on. A man who avoids all discomfort is not someone she can respect. But a man who takes responsibility for himself, for his emotions, reactions, words, and choices, becomes unforgettable. Depth isn't about being complicated. Depth is about being self-aware. It's the man who recognizes his triggers instead of being controlled by them. The man who pauses before reacting. The man who sits with discomfort instead of projecting it onto others. That kind of emotional discipline becomes its own form of power. It communicates, this is a man who has faced himself. This is a man I can trust during my worst moments. Self-mastery is the dividing line between the older man women desire and the older man who becomes frustrated, tired, and overlooked. Because a man without self-mastery tries to control everything outside himself, women, situations, outcomes. But a man with self-mastery focuses on what he can control: his mindset, his discipline, his boundaries, his reactions. This creates a sense of inner stability that a woman feels immediately. She doesn't have to guess who he'll be tomorrow. She doesn't fear inconsistency. She doesn't have to manage his emotions. She can simply relax into the presence of a steady man. This is why depth is seductive. Depth means you lived and you learned. You hurt and you healed. You failed and you grew. You loved and you understood. And because of that, You carry emotional clarity most men never reach. You aren't desperate for validation. You aren't hungry for attention. You aren't reactive to every challenge. You aren't intimidated by a woman's emotions. You understand them. You create space for them. You respond with maturity. That is rare. That is powerful. That is attraction. A woman is drawn to the man whose inner world is not a battlefield, the man who brings peace instead of pressure, direction instead of confusion, strength instead of instability. And here's the most important truth: none of this comes from age alone. It comes from what you did with your age. So let this be your final lesson. A woman doesn't fall for the man who looks the strongest, but the man whose strength comes from within, a man shaped by time, not defeated by it.